is a 2025 Chevrolet Trax Activ. And to my surprise, it is quite the bargain of a car. And so for those of you wondering, yes, this is yet another loaner car that I have due to Stardust being in the shop, which is why I did not play the ad roll of this video is brought to you by my friends at Q&A Chevrolet GMC, because technically I'm not reviewing it like I typically do. They're not just lending me the car for no reason. They're lending me this because my car is in the shop being worked on, and I'm supposed to pick it up in a couple days. And so with that said, I put about 700 miles on this car, and I thought it's time to give you a full review of it, which honestly, I was a bit hesitant getting into this because for one, it's a Chevy, which means it's on the cheaper end of the scale, but also the fact that it's yet another crossover SUV. But I found myself very surprised in the fact that this thing is actually quite the bargain, and I found myself to be more impressed with this car than expected. It actually got to the point where I started speccing one out for myself on GM's website. Now, am I going to go through with that? Well, you'll have to find out at the end of the video. But the reason why I am stating this to begin with is because the general bargain of this vehicle, it's so affordable at the price point, and yet you get so much with this car. This one right here is the Activ model, and it is fully loaded. It's got the driver's safety equipment stuff, so that means it's got adaptive cruise and that type of thing, along with the sunroof. This car is literally fully loaded. The only option left you can get for this thing is paint. That's it. You could spec a different paint color on this, and yet this thing still doesn't even break $28,000. That is just an insane bargain, and I can't ignore that. And so we're going to take a look at this insane bargain and see what you get for a fully loaded car for under $28,000. Starting off the spec dump, we're going to be taking a look here at the Activ trim level today. There are a total of 5 trims, and the Activ happens to be the top of the line. And in terms of our powertrain specs, we happen to have a 1.2 liter 3-cylinder. Yes, a 3-cylinder. More on that in a few minutes. This tiny little 3-cylinder happens to produce 137 horsepower and 162 pound-feet of torque. It is mated to a 6-speed automatic and a front-wheel drive powertrain setup. There is no all-wheel drive available. And in terms of your fuel economy ratings, you get 28 miles per gallon in the city, 32 miles per gallon in the highway, and 30 miles per gallon combined. These are all EPA estimated efficiency ratings. The size of your fuel tank is 13.2 gallons, and that is about enough to get you a range of 369 miles to 422 miles, depending on how efficient you drive. In terms of pricing, starting off with our LS trim, that starts at a very affordable $21,700 MSRP. The 1RS, because there's 2 different RS levels, starts at $23,200 MSRP. Stepping up to the LT, you don't increase in price at all. The 2RS starts at $25,400 MSRP, and the same goes for the Activ as well. And I should also take note, this is not for 2025 pricing, because by the time I am actually recording this segment, Chevy just happened to have released the 2026 model year, and now all I have is 2026 pricing. That's what you get. But as far as from what I can tell, they didn't make any changes to at least your trim levels and specs and all that. Though I think they did increase the price just a bit from what I'm comparing to on the window sticker to here. I think they only increased the price by $100, but that's what all I found. But speaking of window stickers and all that, let's take a look at today's tester. Of course, as I mentioned, we have the Activ, and that starts at $25,400 MSRP. And in terms of list of options, this car is basically fully loaded with the driver's confidence package, adding an additional $795. It has the sunroof, which adds an additional $895. We have the front plate bracket, which is an additional $40, and a destination fee of $1,795, bringing us to a total price of $28,925 MSRP as equipped. As always with these reviews, we start up front and discuss the styling of the vehicle, which, I'll be honest, I'm not that big of a fan of, but I'm surprised that the Activ actually cleans up the styling a bit compared to lower trim models. See, for some reason on the LT and all other lower spec models, including the RS and such, I don't understand why, but they added a chrome accent right here, and it just makes the whole front look, I don't know, kind of dorky, kind of stupid, kind of ugly. This at least is body colored on the Activ model, which means no chrome, and it just removes a bit of busy elements, especially because I'm not a fan of the general shapes and body lines of this particular design. Albeit, yes, design is personal preference. You have eyes, you judge whether you like the design yourself or not, but for me, I'm not a fan of this design. Particularly due to the headlight situation. I really hate it when for some reason, I don't understand why they do this, but automakers have lately been trending towards separate headlight housings from your daytime running lights, and it just adds a second element, and it just looks busier and clunkier, and I don't like it. I don't like to see it. But in terms of lighting technology, there's some things that I like to see here. For example, the obvious daytime running light, but then also we have LED low and high beams. I do like to see that, although I do wish that these turn signals were LED as well. But then again, this is a car you can get for under 28 grand. I guess they have to cut costs somewhere, but come on, LEDs are cheap these days. I need a prop rod again, don't I? In terms of what we have under the hood here, it is a very unusual choice to see in a car like this, but I mean, it works. So under the hood here, you will find a 1.2 liter, not even a 4-cylinder, but a 3-cylinder engine. Yes. Not 4, but 3 cylinders. Makes me a bit nervous when we do the test drive, but as I found out after driving this car for about 700 miles, it really isn't a problem. So like usual, I typically don't have the dimensional numbers of this particular car because I always forget to do my research beforehand. But nonetheless, I would actually like to discuss the sizing of this vehicle because if you watch this channel, you know I complain oh so much about the size that vehicles have gotten these days. And to my surprise, the Trax is compact in almost every good way. I really am liking the dimensions of this car. It's smaller than an Equinox, but not so small where there's almost no trunk space or back seat room. But the roof line also isn't actually that high. It's actually lower than an Equinox. You might notice my head is actually above the roof line of this crossover SUV. I really don't know what type of body style this car is because on one hand, the roof line is so low that can you really call it a crossover? But on the other hand, the ground clearance on this thing is so high, can you call it a hatchback? I don't know. And of course, what we have for taillights, being this is supposed to be a car you can purchase fully loaded for under 28K. Yeah, they're obviously halogens. This is a complete fail on my taillight test because for one, there is not a single LED component, not even the reverse light is LED. So that means your brake lights, your turn signals, your reverse lights, they're all halogen, which is very unfortunate, but that's not even my biggest problem. It really looks like they could have 2 separate spots here, one to be the brake light and one to be the turn signal, and guess what? Yeah, they're combined in the same bulb. Brake lights and turn signals, as you guys know, if you watch this channel, should never be the same bulb. Brake light should always be red, turn signal should always be amber. GM, you really suck at this. But taillights aside, we should probably now come to the cargo area, because it's been interesting. Despite that this is a fully equipped vehicle, no power tailgate. You cannot get a power tailgate on this. Oh, lovely. I hate these things. Note to automakers, do not ever install these things in a car ever again. These suck. But in terms of your cargo capacity, well, this is where it kind of tries to be a sedan. I always hate these cargo covers, and it's because it basically takes away the whole point of the vehicle being a hatchback. At this point, it's just a sedan, but with a taller trunk hatch. There's no cargo capacity benefit to doing this. I understand, but privacy covers, which makes sense in the city, but I really hate these things. Automakers, if you're not going to do a retractable cargo cover, then just don't do a cargo cover at all, because these things suck. But nonetheless, we do have to test out the cargo capacity, so I shall crawl into here. Definitely tighter than Stardust trunk, which, for your information, Stardust is a sedan. Alright, so it looks like if I were to close the trunk, which I can't do because I can't reach it from this position, obviously. Yeah, you could fit me in here and I'd have no idea how to get out because as far as I can tell, there is no manual release from the inside of the trunk. And let's see, can I find the latch fold the seats down. Oh no, I can't even reach that. I'm feeling for where it is, but I cannot reach with this cargo cover. In other words, you'd have to bust this thing off if you're trying to escape the cost. So cargo capacity, it's a bit on the tight side. Like, I actually fit better in my sedan's trunk than I do this, which again is really weird because this is supposed to be a hatchback. Nonetheless, you can fit one Alpha DeWolf in the trunk of a Trax. And just to note off some final details of what's in here, we do have a sub trunk here with a spare tire. Not bad. And that is B. That is B. That is B. And that concludes our walk around on the exterior. I guess it's time we get inside the car and show you how we got to $28,000 fully loaded, because spoiler alert, the interior could use a slight bit of improvement, but nonetheless, we have to get inside first. And here's the key that allows us to do that. Part of me, it's attached to my key ring of other stuff, since this is my loaner car. But yeah, this is GM's actually older designed key. I am very impressed that they're using their older design because I don't like their new design. See, the reason why I don't like the new design is because the old design here has these rubber buttons which are nice and soft in the hand versus the new hard plasticky buttons that just feel cheap. I do like to see they're using the old key design here. But nonetheless, to my surprise, a $28,000 car has remote start. So to engage it, you just lock car, you push and you hold the remote start button, and it fires up that 3-cylinder engine to life. And to cancel it, you just hold the button again, and just like so. Also for $28,000, and I think below, I don't know if you can get a Trax without this, but this does indeed have a smart entry system. So obviously it's locked right now. You push the button, it unlocks the door. Push the button, locks the doors. And it's nice that actually this time there's a visual indicator to tell you whether the doors are locked or not. But nonetheless, let us get inside and check out the interior of the Trax, which it's interesting to say the least. So in terms of step in height, it's actually really good. And keep in mind, I'm short, I'm 5'8", and so I do care about step in height a lot because I've learned this to be a problem with some vehicles. But step in height is pretty good. I can basically fall right into the seat right here, which is good. Speaking of the seats, these are actually faux leather. It's all synthetic leather, which on a cheap car like this is really nice. And the seats, I can confidently tell you, they're pretty comfortable seats. I'm not complaining too much. They're on the firmer side, but they are at least comfortable and they grip my sides just right. But nonetheless, shutting the door, decent thunk. It's a little on the cheap side. I heard a slight rattle at the end, but actually the door thunk is not that bad. And now at this point, because the sun is starting to beat down on this interior, let's fire this up so we can turn the air conditioning on. And of course, foot on the brake. And I don't know if you can get these without push button start, which again, for a car fully maxed out at $28K, that's nice to see. And now it's time to give you a tour of the interior, where this is where things might leave a little to be desired. And this is kind of how GM got this car down to under 28K fully loaded. So we start off with the door panel here. This is a really hard plastic. It is not soft or padded and by any stretch of the imagination. To my surprise, on at least the Active model, they did put this leather side padding right here. But the armrest, this is one thing that I found to be incredibly annoying, especially when I took this car on a road trip. This armrest is the same hard plastic as up here. It is not nice and friendly for your elbows, and yet the padded part of the door panel is not where your arm rests. See, my arm rests like this. It's not against the pads, so it's incredibly uncomfortable. If only they decided to invert these, then I'd be okay with that. You're mostly going to find hard materials in this interior. That's no shocker. None of the windows are fully automatic up from the looks of it, even the driver's window. So yeah, it's fully auto down, but not even the driver's window is fully auto up. You have to hold the switch. And let's test out the other windows just in case. So passenger window, auto down, not auto up, of course, and then the rear windows, because they often cheap out here. Oh, that's auto down too. So all the windows at least are auto down, but none of them are auto up. As annoying as that is for me, it really doesn't pass the Windows test that well. But in terms of the rest of our materials here in the cabin, it's again mostly hard plastics, like up here and such. Some is grained, some is smooth, some of it is designed in an interesting way, but yeah, it's all hard plastics. Nothing feels premium in here at all. But I will say, at least they did an okay job at designing the interior. I'm not too annoyed by all the hard plastics, but a little room for improvement on materials. But back to the left side of the interior, we have some older GM parts. I'm surprised that they actually left some of the old parts in, because this is a component out of my car, which is a 2019 model. But despite that there's no fog lights, the fog light button would typically be here, but this car doesn't offer fog lights, so obviously this is blank. But this is where you'll find your headlight controls along with your interior dimmer switch as well. Moving up here, we have our nice leather wrapped steering wheel. This is actually, I expected it to be cheaper given that this is a 28K vehicle, but no, the steering wheel is leather wrapped and you'd be surprised what you'll find on it. You'll find adaptive cruise control. Yes, this does have adaptive cruise and it's awesome. And a heated steering wheel for in the winter, which given that it's starting to cool down here in October in the UP of Michigan, yeah, I've been appreciating that button a lot. And then you'll also find your other media controls right here, although I found that due to the way the software design in the gauge cluster is, this is kind of useless. If I'm being honest, all of these are kind of useless. And speaking of said gauge cluster, apparently they offer a couple of designs where if you hold the scroll wheel and release, it gives you a couple gauge cluster designs. I'm not going to showcase them all because, well, it takes a bit to cycle through. It's not the most responsive thing in the world, but gauge cluster is fine. It shows you your bare necessities, although I'm not exactly a fan. I found this to be a bit of a problem with the speedometer here in the middle, but the tachometer going around it. I would actually mistake this to also be a part of the speedometer. And so I would accidentally speed on the highway because I thought, oh, this is around here, I'm doing just fine. But no, it gets confusing. Just be aware of that. In terms of your stocks, these are, once again, parts out of an older GM product. Not even that old, it's just last gen stock technology, but I'm not complaining. I actually prefer these stocks over their new ones. And oh yeah, auto high beams for 28K. What? And then the other stock here is your wiper stock. They are not rain sensing wipers, which that's okay in this price category, but you also will find your rear wiper controls right here. And at this point, I think it's time we discuss some storage within the car, which some good spots, some not so good spots. So if we start off with our center console, oh, we'll find a Chubbs. Center console is fairly deep. It's okay, but yeah, deep enough to fit Chubbs, I guess. You'll also find a pocket right here that I've been using to store cash and coins. It works pretty well for that. You'll find some cup holders here, and I think you could fit a phone in this slot like so. Yeah, okay, you can fit a phone like this if you want. Although, honestly, I would rather put my phone up in here where there is, yes, again, for 28K, a wireless charging pad. That is crazy. Unfortunately, there is no storage underneath this center console right here, and that probably has something to do with your old school traditional shifter. I've kind of stopped liking these at this point. Now they just feel clunky, especially since the shift pattern is not actually indicating the exact position you need the shifter to be in. It's like if I put it in reverse. Okay, to me this looks like I just put it into L because, well, the L indicator is here and this is where the position of the shifter is. I really wish that they would correlate the letter positions with the shifter position itself. That would actually make the process of shifting gears a lot less clunky, because that's how I felt about this whole thing. Bit clunky, but nonetheless, it's a traditional shifter. So if you like that, I guess that's good. 6-speed transmission, not even a CVT. I love to see that. No CVTs here. This is good. And yeah, to toggle through your gears, you got these buttons right here. And then in terms of what we have in reverse, we do have a standard backup camera, no 360, which I guess that's okay. Backup camera is not the best resolution out there, but it's fine, it's serviceable, and I've been doing just fine with it. And of course, right below your shifter, you'll find your electronic parking brake. But moving further up here, I should also mention some power connections. You have a Type A and a Type C. The only reason I'm using a Type A is because my personal car does not have Type C, and this is the cable that I pulled out of it when I swapped into this loaner. But I'd normally be using the Type C here. You'd also have a 12-volt outlet you could use for older accessories or that type of stuff. Moving up, we have our single zone automatic climate control. Nothing too fancy about that. Your temperature knobs here, your fan speed dial is here. I guess your auto and your AC buttons there, your circ is there. Windshield defrosters are right here. You actually have, to my surprise, heated seats. Unfortunately, despite that this is a fully spec'd car, no ventilated seats available. I'm assuming that they use this panel in another car, but I don't know. But there's no ventilated seats available in this car at all. So these will forever be blank switches along with this. I'd have no idea what they put here, but you will find your climate zones right here. And I guess that will take us to our audio system, which I will have you note I've not been particularly impressed with, but here's the sound sample nonetheless.
The year is 1991. Birds and people are living together in seemingly perfect harmony until one day a young man catches fire. This is Phoenix. You've hit your fury.
So yeah, the sound system is not the best. It could use some tuning if you're an audiophile, but if you're not an audiophile, it's serviceable. It functions just fine. It's just because I care about sound quality a lot, I'm not particularly impressed with the sound system. And they didn't really partner with Bose or any of their other speaker partners to improve the sound system in this. So this is really the best you're gonna get for a fully loaded 28K vehicle. I mean, again, it's 28K. Can you complain all that much? And I guess that finally takes us to our infotainment system, which I'm sorry if this is going to be a bit difficult to see. There's not really much all that I can do. Can I try the sun visor? No, that doesn't help. But yeah, I have a complaint with the fact that a lot of GM's infotainment systems have kind of had dim screens lately, which is a bit of a problem. I'm trying my best to block the sun here, but oh well, this is what we're stuck with. But yeah, to my surprise, we don't have an older version of their infotainment system. This is their latest version with Android Automotive based connectivity, even though this is missing a few things like navigation. Yes, you cannot get navigation on this car, but that doesn't really become a problem when you have access to Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And as a result, yes, you can use Apple CarPlay for Apple Maps, Google Maps, what's your pleasure. Not much to complain about there in terms of the lack of navigation. In fact, this is kind of how I prefer navigation to be done. I don't want it done via the car where you might have to pay for updates or who knows how updates are handled. I'd rather just do it through my phone. But other than that, this is really not that advanced of an infotainment system. I mean, you'll find some shortcuts here for your audio. When I'm not having CarPlay connected, this will display your phone icon. To my surprise, they provide a hotkey for traction control, which I love. Oh, this is cool. Just provide a menu to turn everything off. Okay, I like that. GM, take note. Put that in more of your vehicles. And then another odd choice that they made is they removed the trip computer from being in the gauge cluster. It's now found in here, so this is where you'll find your trip information and such. That's, I guess, how much I've been averaging in terms of fuel economy on this thing. We have a few other gauges here that for some reason won't show up in your gauge cluster, like your coolant temp and your battery voltage. And then it does have some maintenance stuff like oil life and your tire pressures, I guess. It's a bit of a warm day. I can understand why that's a bit high. I just hope I don't pop it on the way out of where I'm currently located. But yeah, I should point out that's where you'll find most of your useful stuff. It's pretty much in that menu here on the main display. To my surprise, there's a redundant climate menu here. It really is not necessary because legit all of your controls are down here. So I'm not 100% sure why you need to visit this menu, but okay, it's here, I guess. And there's not much to discuss in settings other than the typical teen driver and valet mode and that type of stuff, although I don't know why you would be taking this car to a valet parking garage given the cost of it. It's like you're not going to fancy events if you can barely afford this car. But nonetheless, the infotainment system is incredibly easy to use. It has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto built in, which I wish they would include on their electric cars, but nonetheless, this is what we're dealing with. Oh, I forgot to mention a couple buttons down here. I always forget to mention something. That is the button to defeat your auto start stop system, and that is for your lane centering. Well, not exactly lane centering, it's more like lane keep assist, though I found I've been shutting this off a lot because it is not particularly great. Coming up here, we'll find your mirror. It's not even auto dimming, it's just a basic mirror, and you'll find some airbag stuff along with your typical GM OnStar. This is to control your dome lighting situation, so you can have it fully off. In the middle here is when you open the doors, and then this turns them all on. Oh, that's bizarre. That is absolutely bizarre. You can't actually turn on each individual light. That is so bizarre. I've never seen that before. Okay, but we do have a sunroof, again, on a car for 28 grand, fully loaded. It does open up. I'm not entirely sure how that functions. Oh, wait, here it is. So there, it does open up. Do we have a wind buffer? We do have a slight wind buffer. Oh, this is barely anything. Yeah, I don't know what this is for. I should also point out our sun visors here, where we do have a mirror, but no illumination. What about on the passenger sun visor? Nope, no illumination in the mirrors, and we do detach, but we do not extend. Again, they got a cost cut somewhere. So, what does Evil Twin think of the back seat?
You told me this car was fully loaded.
I did. Well, nonetheless, we have a backseat review to do. So, starting off with the materials on the door panel here, they suck. Yeah, hard plastic. I don't like that. I don't even get leather right here. How come you get leather here and I don't? This door panel is cheap. I might be able to fit a bottle of water in here. potentially. But moving on from the door panel, I'm missing a map pocket here. I got one here, but I don't have one here. Also, no heated rear seats. This is supposed to be a fully loaded car. Where's my rear heated seats? That don't make sense. Although I do appreciate one Type-C port, although I don't know what I'm gonna fit in here because I'm always on my phone. The floor here is perfectly flat. I'll give it that, though these seats are actually, I think they're even firmer than the seats up front. So yeah, definitely much cheaper back here. I don't even have a center armrest. This is a fully loaded car. Interesting illumination. I don't even get to turn on individual map lights. That's so bizarre. Why does the sunroof only come up to there? I wish it came back here to let more light in back here. But nonetheless, let's do the legroom test and see what we're doing. Ooh, actually not bad. Legroom's pretty good. No complaints. I got plenty of knee room despite being 5'8" behind you. And if we scoot over to the seat fully slid back, wow, to my surprise, this is pretty roomy. I just wish that the back seat was nicer, better materials and features and such. So because I happen to have chosen a location a little off the main roads, I do have to take driving a bit slow and pray I really don't pop these tires because these are a bit high right now. I chose to do it out here because of the fall color scenery, and black cars really don't do well in videos because they're stealthy black. It's like it's not particularly interesting. It looks like a blob from a distance. Almost up. Come on. Yep. All right, we made it up the hill. So yeah, part of the ride going to be a little bumpy right now because I'm off-road. But yeah, I chose to come out and film the main footage out here where the fall colors are happening right now. I guess it's a pro to the UP. Colors are beautiful. Let's go out and do this in nature. There's a bit of a problem that I have with Stardust because Stardust doesn't actually have the ground clearance this has. While I'm waiting to get to my main road where I do my typical test loop, I want to discuss my personal thoughts and feelings about the car as I've driven this for about 700 miles at this point. I picked it up with under 20 miles on the odometer. And so initially when I got into this, I wasn't ever impressed with the styling. I've never been really impressed with GM's styling on any of their latest vehicles. I'd say the Cadillacs are pretty much the only thing I can accept styling-wise these days, but they've ruined Buick's design language. I can't stand Buick's design language today. I'm not a fan of Chevrolets, and GMC's has gotten a little on the iffy side for me as well. And as a result, I've just not been a fan of GM's latest products, but this was one of my least favorite because I knew that the Trax was cheap. I knew that because it's a Chevy, the interior is going to be not all that nice. To my surprise, after I got into it, there's only a couple complaints that I found personally with this, and it's just, I don't like the seating position. It's just too high, and the general interior ergonomics, they're not that great, and I think it primarily has to do with the pedal positions. Due to the pedal positions, I have to position myself further back than I would, which means the steering wheel comes back, which that's not a problem, but I can't reach any of the controls like the infotainment system. I really have to lean forward to reach it, which is a bit of an annoyance for me, and I got to get around this ATV. Yeah, that's what happens when you film your stuff out on the snowmobile trail. But over time, as I got into this more and learned what this thing was equipped with, and eventually I didn't even actually realize this is the fully spec model until I did some research for this review. And honestly, I'm quite impressed with the amount of equipment you're getting for the bargain. I mean, sure, it's missing some dumb things like there's no auto up windows or there's no lights in your visor mirrors. I don't ever use them, so it's like, what does that matter to me? But you still get a sunroof, which at least lets some light in for the driver, which I appreciate. You get adaptive cruise. I've learned, taken this car on a road trip to Wisconsin. My goodness, I love the adaptive cruise. And I hate that that's an option on my car, but my car does not have that option. The auto high beams were kind of nice too. It's just in general. And the heated steering wheel. This car is under 30 grand. I would have assumed to get all of this equipment on a Trax, you have to pay bare minimum 35 grand. That was what I thought, at least at the time. But no, this is a fully equipped Chevy Trax, and yet it's under 30 grand. That's impressive. And so I've come to really like this car after I figured out the value you get out of this thing. But also, as I have a couple problems with Stardust, not the fact that she's in the shop being worked on right now. Nonetheless, like, this has a few advantages over Stardust that I'm appreciating. Options aside, I mean, I'm talking like general vehicle platform advantages that this have that I'm appreciating over Stardust. The big one is ground clearance. I've learned with Stardust, that car is so low to the ground, which I do like. I do like cars being low to the ground, but it's a problem in the winter time. In the winter, Stardust is literally a sled. I keep bottoming her out when the roads are not plowed. You can imagine is a bit of a problem for a car like that. And this has the ground clearance. But at the same time, I'm thinking, okay, I can't really drive Stardust in the winter because the lack of ground clearance in that car is just a problem when the roads aren't plowed. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe I should get a truck because I'm not a fan of these type of cars in general, the crossovers and all that, because that's what everyone else is going to say. Oh, you don't like big cars? Well, you need a crossover. Just get a small crossover. But I really hate those cars because they drive like crap. They're not great for gas mileage, and especially with what GM has been doing lately, because I think it's a bit obvious I'm a GM fan. I'm not a fan of their crossovers. They're not that great with gas mileage. They're tall and not necessarily great to drive. It's just, I don't like them. And I've driven the smaller crossovers. I've driven the Terrain. I've driven the Equinox. I've even driven a Cadillac XT5. And in general, it's just, I'm not a fan of those crossovers. But this thing is so weird in the fact that it has the ground clearance of a crossover, but it doesn't have the size of one. I find this car in an interesting position to the point where I actually considered, maybe should I get this over a truck? Because I still don't like big vehicles. And trucks these days have gotten so massive to the point where I don't want to drive them that much. I'm afraid to drive them because they're so big and you have to respect their size on the road. So I'm wondering, do I compromise with this? I don't know. I probably wouldn't compromise with this. I'd probably get the Buick version. I'm sorry, this interior is just too cheap for me. But at this point, we have now made it to the road on my test loop, and I really hope no one's coming over this hill because I will get smacked. All right, let's do an acceleration. Little torque steer. Yep, little torque steer. And that's 60. So 0 to 60 in this is not particularly all that impressive, I will have you note, but it's fine. Because given the price point of this car, you're not looking for performance. You're not looking for the fastest car in the world. You're looking for something that is small and compact, cheap in price, relatively good on fuel economy, and has a warranty. You know, I give the UP so much crap because of our boiling hot summers and freezing cold winters with a butt ton of snow, and our springs are just a slushy mess. But, you know, sometimes I guess fall, autumn really is the one redeeming quality of the UP. But nonetheless, back to the video. Acceleration is not the greatest, though I've taken this on a road trip where I have gotten on the interstate, I-39. It's really not a problem, especially considering the price tag of this vehicle. You are not going to complain about the acceleration of this car at all. And in terms of even passing power, we should test that out real quick. So I'll slow down just a little bit. So let's do 40 miles an hour and let's get back up to 60. So we hesitate a lot to drop some gears, but I will admit, despite that, again, tiny 1.2 liter 3-cylinder, not even a 4-cylinder in this car, I'm not actually complaining that much, and here's why after this corner. That handled really well, despite being tall and off the ground. But nonetheless, okay, here's the reason why I'm not complaining about this choice. The gearing ratios that they chose in this transmission allow this engine to really get into its power and torque band, and as a result, I don't feel like this thing is working as hard. The gearing is just perfect, and also, because this is a smaller car, it's also light. It's not heavy at all. This does not feel like the Equinox and the Terrain, where they felt like heavy cars, and its tiny 1.5 liter 4-cylinder just felt too underpowered for a car of that size. But because this is smaller and lighter, and they absolutely nailed the gear ratios in this transmission compared to this engine, it doesn't feel sluggish, and I do not feel like I am working this engine all that hard. Despite that this is a small 3-cylinder, there's not really all that much to complain about in terms of the powertrain setup of this. And now I should also do a quick braking test. There is no one behind me, so let's get to the top of this hill. Braking in 3, 2, 1. Oh, no skid marks, so the ABS is tuned pretty well. All right, so now we have just gotten onto arguably the most beautiful road on my test loop, but also the most fun to drive on, because this is where we test out the handling performance of the car. Here comes a corner. Let's test out our handling performance. All right. Again, I'm surprised because this is off the ground compared to your average sedan. The handling is just It's really impressive. I typically have to slow down for those corners in my car, Stardust, and yet I am not slowing down at all. I am driving the speed limit of this road, and I do not feel the need to slow down. Now, yes, the car does lean a little bit. You're going to feel some body lean because this has some ground clearance. It's not as low to the ground as you'd probably like for a proper handling and enthusiast driving. But my goodness, this thing drives so well. And it's not even a performance car. It's absolutely mind-blowing how fun this is to drive, especially on these back roads. Now you can understand why I kind of like this car, because for one, in the wintertime, ground clearance is something that I'd really like, but this is still small and it drives so well. And in terms of the fuel economy I've gotten on this thing over my road trip, it wasn't far off from Stardust. Now, Stardust is a hybrid vehicle, so that car is going to get better gas mileage than what this is because there's no hybrid componentry of this. The fuel economy was not far off. I was averaging roughly 32 miles per gallon this whole time, which on Stardust, I typically get 35 with the AC blasting. But if I do AC off and hypermile that thing at 60 miles an hour, I typically get 40 mpg, sometimes even 45, depending on elevation changes. This thing, the fuel economy is not that great, but it is not far off. And that primarily has to do with it being a smaller vehicle with a smaller engine. The engine in Stardust, a lot bigger than this, actually. I really have been blown away by the Trax. One of my cousins actually drives this, and she tells me she loves her car. She loves her Chevy Trax. And I could never understand why, because again, I still can't get on board with the design. I hate the design. It's absolutely hideous, both inside and out. And I knew that the interior is not going to feel all that nice. Again, for a fully loaded car, I would have preferred just at least the armrest, the thing is really offensive to me. I really do not like how the armrest is just straight, hard plastic. But nonetheless, that's the situation. And I guess while we're on this road with some nice lines, I'll turn on lane keep assist, see what we do. And yeah, this is not really true lane centering, because we just exited the line. It didn't even pick it up. So yeah, lane centering is not that great. And then there are times where it doesn't really know where the lanes are, and it will actually push you around within the lane that you're in. And so I've never really liked the lane keep assist or the lane centering in this car at all. But the adaptive cruise control is really nice. It does not read speed signs, so you do have to manually slow it down yourself when the speed limit changes. Unless there's a car in front of you, then it'll just follow the car in front of you. The safety systems on this are a little oversensitive, but I guess there's other aspects I should talk about with the car as well. I mean, I've talked about my seating position not being perfectly ideal. I would still like to get a little lower to the floor. It's not as bad as in all these other crossovers and SUVs, and unfortunately the problem with a lot of crossovers and SUVs is their dashes are so high that I end up needing to sit higher anyway to see over it, because I am so short. I'm only 5'8", but the dash in this one is actually pretty low, and as a result, now I want to get lower, but the seat physically will not let me. But let's talk about visibility on that note too, now that we're in the city, because visibility is very important when you're in the city. I can see very well up front. The front windshield here is excellent. My side windows are also great too. The belt line is not too tall. It's not as low as I've seen in some vehicles, like the Chevy Bolt, for example, but the belt line is perfectly fine. And in terms of blind spots, I mean, I have a bit of one back here, but this is primarily due to my driving position. If I could get further forward, I'd probably have less of a blind spot. It's just my driving position. But overall, visibility out of this is pretty fine. Oh, I didn't even realize this had blind spot monitoring. So that has also helped too, due to my blind spot here with the B pillar. And it also doesn't help that, okay, this is just because I'm driving a loaner car, I have the window sticker on that window back there, so that's been posing as a bit of a pain point in terms of visibility, but under normal circumstances, you typically don't have a window sticker on the window right there. I really don't know what else to say about the driving experience on this. It is just phenomenally impressive. The one thing left to test is ride quality, but I do need to get a little further up the road where I actually can get to that bumpy section where we can test out ride quality. In general, the general driving experience of this car, especially for the money, it's so fun, and you don't even have to spend that much money for it. Okay, so here's a little bit of a bumpy section, but this is not the typical section I use to measure ride quality. It is adequate for a car in this price range. This is, I have driven vehicles with worse ride quality than this. That's pretty good. Now we come to my road that I use for testing ride quality, and the reason for it is because it is torn up and it really needs to be paved. It is just up ahead. So we are cruising at 25 miles an hour. We might end up doing slower due to what this Equinox might do in front of us. There we go. This is where the bumps are. Oh, they must have smoothed it out recently. Oh, nope. Not right there. Driving in the bumps. So the suspension is a little bit on the firmer side, but it's like, there's not much to complain about. I've been saying this a lot. It's just, I'm very impressed with the value of this car. The one thing that I would wish out of it would just be that it would be fully electric, but that's just because I'm me. I love electric cars. But for a gas car, this is an excellent value. It is really hard to complain about. Chevy did just announce the Chevy Bolt, the return of the Bolt recently. And so I'm excited to look into that when that comes to my local dealership. But for now, for a cheap car, I'd argue this is damn near perfect. Starting off under the hood, we come to our power figures, and given that this is a piddly 1.2 liter 3-cylinder, yeah, its weak power figures are only good enough to give this thing a 3 out of 10. The transmission, though, is fairly standard, though, and thank goodness it is not a CVT, and its 6 gears allow it to receive a 6 out of 10. In terms of drivetrain, this is a front-wheel drive only. You cannot get this thing in all-wheel drive, and therefore it only gets a 2 out of 10. 0 to 60 happens in a little under 9 seconds, but it's still only good enough for a 4 out of 10. That brings us to our fuel economy numbers, which fuel economy is a real strong suit for this powertrain setup. It does well enough to get an 8 out of 10, bringing us to a total of 23 out of 50 for under the hood. In terms of the weekend categories, we start off with styling, and as controversial as this might be to some, I'm sorry, I cannot get behind the design of this thing. It just looks so ugly. And then the fact that when you look at it in action, you watch all of its turn signals and its brake lights, it just looks cheap. I cannot give it anything higher than a 1 out of 10. I can't stand this design. Something that I can stand, though, is visibility. It's good enough to get a 6 out of 10. I was actually very impressed with it, and I think it deserves its full 6 out of 10. Handling was a real shocker for me, because I figured this being a little higher off the ground than your typical sedan would mean it would handle worse, but I mean, its small form factor allowed this thing to handle just fine, and to the point where it was kind of fun, and so I gave it a 5 out of 10. And speaking of fun factor, it is something that you can have a little fun driving. Enough to the point where, you know what, I think this would be more fun to drive than almost any other crossover you can get your hands on, due to its small, nimble, tossable ability, and so I gave it a 4 out of 10. It is actually kind of fun to drive. Though, while the fun factor might be relatively okay, the cool factor, not so much. This does have a bit of a reputation for being a cheap, small Chevy, and as a result, this does not score any cool factor points, and it gets a 1 out of 10. Bringing us to a total of 17 out of 50 for the weekend categories. And just so you're aware, normal, daily focused cars tend to not do well in these categories, and that's okay. But they certainly do pretty well in the daily category, starting off with features. While this is a fully loaded model example that I have here, well, some of the features that I have, well, it is nice to see that they're there, like wireless charger, wireless Apple CarPlay, and that type of stuff. The fact that the sunroof is your only, basic, standard sunroof. And what's the deal here with the windows? The driver doesn't even get an automatic up window. There's a few weird things that are missing from this car. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the dome light situation. Yet you can't individually turn on your dome lights. You have to turn them all on at once, which is a bit interesting. And so, yeah, I'm giving this a 4 out of 10. And comfort, it's a cheap, compact crossover. While the suspension does well enough for the price tag, you can't really ask for more for the price. The thing is, this score actually accounts for all different suspension types out there that include more expensive vehicles, and as a result, this is going to appear a bit on the low end, and it gets a 3 out of 10. Not the worst, I felt. It's pretty good, but there are definitely better suspension setups out there. But then again, this is not as expensive as those cars with those better suspension setups. Okay, enough of comfort. I need to talk about quality. Yeah, quality in this car is real bad. I mean, really, really bad. Not to the point where it's not put together, and that's really this car's only saving grace. The car really is put well together. The problem is the material selection is just so bad. I cannot give it any more than a 2 out of 10. Practicality, as I daily drove this thing for 2 to 3 weeks, I was very impressed with what I was able to do with it. I took this car on a road trip and it fit everything I needed to bring just fine, no problem. And I actually brought home a 12-string guitar in this vehicle and I didn't have any problems fitting it at all, which is, you can't always say the same with every small hatchback that you can find. And so I actually ended up giving this a 7 out of 10. It's more practical than you think, despite its tiny size. And then finally, this might be a bit controversial to some, but when we come to the value category here, I'm giving it the full 10 out of 10. Genuinely, I am so blown away by what you got for the price tag. I thought this thing fully loaded, you are certainly paying over $30,000 for this car. I thought close to 40. In fact, there have been many tests done by other reviewers that have reviewed this car that go out to the public and talk about how this car is fully loaded. And every single time they ask what everyone thinks the price of the car is, they always guess near the $40,000 range. And this thing is only 3/4 the actual price they guess. I think this is truly an absolute bargain, totally worth the money, and I think it deserves a full 10 out of 10, bringing us to a total of 26 out of 50 for the daily categories. Add them all up, we get a grand score of 66 out of 150, and even though this is the lowest scoring vehicle I have on the cardboard here, every other car that I have listed here is all more expensive, ranging from $40,000 to $50,000. And as a result, they're going to obviously score better, but for the total bargain that this car is, a score of 66 is really strong. Overall, my past couple weeks with the Chevy Trax surprised me. I did not expect to like the car as much as I did. And even though, despite that, I've been having plenty of issues with Stardust, primarily the door lock situation has been driving me crazy. Ultimately, when I picked up Stardust back from the dealer, yes, I have my car back now, and gave the Chevy Trax back, ultimately, I don't really miss that car too much. It is still a crossover that I just can't get behind. I can't get behind crossovers in general, even though it did seem appealing, but I will give it credit where credit is due. Damn it, that thing was tempting. And I mean, that thing was really tempting. And so I'm going to conclude this video off here. Thank you for watching. Do me a favor and interact with the stuff below, and also do me a favor and check out my Patreon page. I would very much appreciate that. This is the Random Alpha Drive, signing out.